You keep trying to fix yourself, as if you were broken. You keep chasing tools, books, and methods, believing that if you just try harder, you'll finally be whole. But the truth is, nothing in you was ever broken. It's not weakness, it's not failure, it's the old protection your inner child built to survive still living inside you. And in this video, you'll see why healing is not about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you've always been before the hiding began. For most of your life you've been told, directly or silently, that something is wrong with you. Maybe it was the look in a parent's eyes when you cried too loudly. Maybe it was the silence you received when you needed comfort most. Or maybe it was the way the world rewarded you for being strong, quiet, obedient, instead of tender, vulnerable, real. Over time, these small signals created a story. I am not enough as I am. I must fix myself to be worthy of love. And so you grew into an adult who lives not in the present moment, but in a constant state of repair. It shows up everywhere. In relationships, you shrink yourself to fit what others want, then blame yourself when it falls apart. At work, you push beyond exhaustion, believing recognition will finally quiet the whisper of not enoughness. In friendships, you smile when you're tired, laugh when you're lonely, and give more than you have, hoping that maybe this time your effort will buy belonging. And when none of it fills the ache, you tell yourself you failed again. That is the cruelest part of the wound. It convinces you that the emptiness is proof of your brokenness, when in truth it is proof of how deeply you've hidden yourself. The cycle becomes so normal you don't even question it. You download another self-help book. You sign up for another course. You try meditation, affirmations, journaling, manifestation, each one a noble attempt to fix what was never broken. But no matter what you try, the relief never lasts. It slips through your fingers, leaving you back in the same story. Not enough yet, not whole yet, not healed yet. You chase the next method because you believe wholeness is somewhere outside you, waiting to be earned. And every time it doesn't work, the story deepens. Maybe I'm beyond repair. But what if the very belief that you're broken is the lie? What if your so-called flaws are not evidence of damage, but memories of protection? The moments you hid your voice were not weakness, they were shields against rejection. The walls you built around your heart were not dysfunction, they were fortresses to keep you safe. The perfectionism, the pleasing, the distance, the silence, all of them were brilliant strategies created by a child who did not have the power to choose safety any other way. When you see this, you realize you are not healing to become whole. You are healing to remember you already were. And this is where the shift begins. The pain you carry is not a signal that you are unworthy, it is an invitation to turn inward, to stop fixing and start listening, to see that the feelings you call flaws are in fact fragments of you waiting to come home. If this truth stirs something inside you, let it echo below. Sometimes naming the ache is the first step in breaking its silence. When you trace the wound back, it rarely begins where you think. It's not the breakup that shattered you, not the job loss that crushed you, not even the betrayal that left you reeling. Those are only mirrors of something older, something written into your nervous system long before you had words to name it. The roots are buried in childhood, not always in the traumas you remember, but in the ones you adapted to so well, you forgot they were even there. For some, it began with inconsistency. A parent who loved deeply one day and withdrew the next. The warm hug followed by cold silence, the laughter interrupted by sudden anger. As a child, you never blamed them. You blamed yourself. You thought, if I were better, they would stay consistent. If I could just behave, they wouldn't pull away. And so you began to split yourself. One part still aching for love, another part learning to bury that need so you wouldn't feel the sting of rejection again. For others, it was conditional affection. You were praised when you performed, rewarded when you achieved, celebrated when you played the role they wanted. But when you cried, when you failed, when you showed your raw humanity, the room grew quiet, the smiles faded, the approval vanished. This carved a vow deep into your bones. I must earn love. Who I am is not enough. Joy is dangerous unless it pleases others. That vow may have been invisible, but it shaped every breath, every step, every relationship you entered after. There are those who carry the wound of absence, not abuse, not rage, but emptiness. A parent who was physically present but emotionally far away. You reached out with small hands, but no one reached back. You whispered your fears, but no one truly listened. And so you learned a brutal lesson. My needs don't matter. My feelings are too much. It's safer to disappear inside myself than risk being unseen again. This disappearance followed you into adulthood, disguised as independence, as strength, as self-sufficiency, but beneath it lies a child still waiting to be met. Even in homes that looked perfect from the outside, wounds were born in silence. Maybe no one yelled. Maybe there was food on the table, clothes in the closet, stability in every external sense. But emotional neglect leaves scars just as deep as violence. When your inner world was not mirrored back to you, when your tears were brushed aside, when your excitement was ignored, when your fears were minimized, you learned that your inner reality didn't matter. That belief still echoes today, every time you doubt your feelings, every time you gaslight yourself into silence. The forgotten child inside you did not only learn to survive, they made vows, silent, invisible contracts with themselves. I will not need, I will not cry, I will not show weakness, I will not risk love again. These vows are not memories you consciously recall, but codes written into your body, that tightening in your chest when someone gets too close, that panic when silence stretches too long, that overthinking when you send a simple text. They are not random reactions. They are the voice of that child whispering, stay safe, don't risk it, we remember what happened last time. And here lies the most important truth. None of this was your fault. You did not choose inconsistency. You did not choose conditional love. You did not choose absence or neglect. You simply adapted brilliantly to what life handed you. You built walls because you had to. You silenced yourself because no one else would listen. You clung because letting go felt like death. These were not failures. These were victories of survival. And the fact that you are here, still breathing, still seeking, still listening, is proof that the child inside you did not give up. They endured. They carried you through. And now at last, they are asking to be seen. The echoes of those childhood vows are not trapped in the past. They live in your body, in your choices, in the very way you move through life today. You can see them most clearly in relationships. You may find yourself pulled toward people who feel familiar, not because they are good for you, but because they mirror the unpredictability you once knew. When they give you attention, your heart races, filled with relief. When they pull away, your mind spirals, desperate to win them back. This is not love. It is survival disguised as love. And yet, your nervous system clings to it, because to let go feels like falling into a void. The bond feels magnetic, but it is actually the repetition of a wound, silently asking to be recognized. This pattern does not stop at romance. In friendships, you may notice yourself becoming the giver, the listener, the one who is always there but rarely asks for anything in return. When you feel a need rising inside, you swallow it down, fearing that if you take up too much space, you will lose the connection altogether. You smile when you want to cry. You encourage when you are secretly collapsing. You show up even when you are empty. And though others may see you as strong, inside you feel unseen, wondering if anyone will ever notice that you too are in need of holding. At work, the wound wears a different mask. You may become the perfectionist, pouring endless hours into every task, hoping that flawless performance will finally bring recognition. Or perhaps you are the one who never says no, carrying everyone else's burdens just to feel valuable. Yet no matter how much you give, no matter how much you achieve, the satisfaction never lands. The applause is fleeting, the recognition hollow. Deep inside, you hear the same whisper you once heard in childhood. You are invisible, you are not enough. The office becomes another stage where the child's old vow still runs the script. Even your body carries the imprint. The tightness in your chest when someone says, "I love you." The restless energy that won't let you relax when things finally seem calm. The anxiety that spikes at the thought of being alone, yet the equal panic that arises when someone gets too close. These are not random quirks of personality, they are the body remembering. The nervous system does not forget, and until the wound is seen, it will keep sending the same signals. urging you to repeat what feels safe, even when what feels safe is also what hurts. Sometimes the impact shows itself in your spiritual life. You may pray, meditate, or seek answers in philosophy, but instead of peace you find a subtle emptiness. You long to feel connected, yet something within resists fully surrendering. Trust feels dangerous. Stillness feels unbearable. Even in the presence of the sacred, the vow whispers, "Stay guarded. Don't let yourself be too open." It is not that you lack devotion, it is that your nervous system has equated openness with threat. The very place meant to bring healing is filtered through the lens of survival. And here is where the loneliness deepens. You may see the pattern, you may recognize the cycles, and yet you cannot simply will them away. Logic does not dissolve trauma. Awareness alone does not rewire the body. This is why you can tell yourself, "I deserve better," and still chase the one who leaves you waiting. Why you can say, "I should rest," and still keep pushing until you collapse. Why you can know this is not love, and still feel unable to let go. It is not weakness, it is not failure. It is the body repeating what it knows, the child inside clinging to the only safety they ever trusted. And if, as you listen, something in you stirs, a memory, a pang in your chest, a quiet recognition, let it be spoken. Share below what part of this feels like your reflection. By naming it, you are no longer alone in it. By letting your truth echo in words, you give the forgotten child inside you a voice. And sometimes, the simple act of saying "this is me" is the first thread that begins to unravel the cycle. There comes a point on the path where the question shifts. You stop asking, "How do I fix myself?" and begin to wonder, "What if I was never broken?" This shift may feel strange at first, almost unbelievable, because so much of your life has been built around the opposite belief. You were taught to see yourself as incomplete, flawed, in need of correction. And yet, deep down, there is a whisper that refuses to die, a memory of a time before shame took root, before you learned to silence your needs, before you decided that survival meant becoming someone else. Healing is not about adding something new, but about peeling away the layers that were never yours to carry. When you begin to see your so-called flaws differently, everything changes. The moments when you shut down are no longer evidence that you're cold. They are the echoes of a child who once protected themselves from pain. The times when you feel too emotional are not proof of weakness. They are reminders of the depth of your sensitivity, which only became overwhelming because no one taught you how to hold it safely. Even the habits you once labeled self-sabotage are really acts of loyalty to an older version of you, the one who kept you alive when love felt uncertain. What looks like brokenness is, in truth, the living archive of your survival. But here is the paradox. Survival is not the same as living. The walls that kept you safe also kept out joy. The silence that prevented conflict also muted your voice. The perfectionism that helped you feel worthy also kept you running in endless circles, never stopping to breathe. To come home to yourself is to recognize these patterns for what they are. Not failures, not curses, but old vows that can finally be released. When you see this, you no longer try to erase the past. You simply let it soften. You let the armor fall away, not because you force it down, but because you no longer need it. This is where resistance often arises. You may feel the pull toward wholeness, yet another part of you whispers, "It cannot be true. I am too damaged. I will never be safe." That resistance is not a sign that you are failing. It is the last defense of a nervous system that has lived in survival for too long. It is the echo of anxious attachment. The fear that if you trust, you will be abandoned. If you relax, you will be hurt. If you love, you will lose. And so even as your adult mind longs to rest, your body holds on, convinced that safety is always one step away. That is why this teaching flows directly into the real reason you have anxious attachment: inner child healing. In that video, we explore how inconsistent love in childhood shaped your nervous system into a constant state of vigilance. Why silence feels unbearable, why closeness feels fragile, why your body confuses love with danger. It reveals that anxious attachment is not your flaw, but a code your inner child once wrote to survive. And by understanding that, you begin to see how the very panic you feel today is not proof of brokenness, but proof of endurance. If what you've heard here speaks to you, that video is the next doorway on this path. Because coming home to yourself and healing anxious attachment are not separate journeys. They are two threads of the same tapestry, woven together by the child you once were. As you hold this awareness, you begin to notice the subtle openings. A moment of rest no longer feels unbearable, but tender. A kind word no longer feels like a trap, but a gift. A silence in the room no longer echoes with rejection, but invites presence. These small shifts may not look dramatic on the outside, but they are revolutions within. Each time you allow yourself to experience safety where you once expected danger, the code rewrites itself. Each time you choose softness over defense, the old vow loosens. Each time you breathe into the ache instead of running from it, you come closer to remembering who you've always been. And the truth is, that memory has never left you. It waits beneath the scars, beneath the masks, beneath the endless striving. It waits like a home you once abandoned, but which never abandoned you. To return is not to build something new, it is to open the door that has always been there, waiting for you to step inside. There is a moment, quiet but undeniable, when you realize that all the years of chasing wholeness were never about becoming someone new. They were always about returning. The healing you seek is not in the future, it is in the memory of yourself before shame took root. The tenderness that once laughed freely, the voice that once asked without fear, the body that once trusted rest. None of it was erased, only covered. To come home is to remember that your essence was never destroyed, only hidden beneath the survival masks you once needed. The idea of home can be unsettling because it is not a destination, not a fixed place you arrive at and never leave. Home is a state of being where you finally stop abandoning yourself. It is the place inside where you no longer measure your worth by productivity, where silence no longer feels like danger, where love no longer feels like a battlefield. And yet, the road back is not paved with grand gestures. It is found in the smallest choices, the breath you don't hold back, the truth you whisper instead of swallowing, the kindness you allow yourself to receive without suspicion. These are the moments when the forgotten child feels safe enough to return. Of course, the mind will resist. It will say, "You've been gone too long. You've failed too much. You cannot return." These voices are not truth. They are the echoes of old vows trying to keep you safe in the only way they know. But safety does not live in avoidance. It lives in presence. And the more you allow yourself to stay present with what is, the more those voices soften. They no longer command you. They become whispers you can hold with compassion. And in that holding, the very fear they carried begins to dissolve. When you feel this shift, however small, let it be named. Let it be spoken. If something inside you stirred while hearing these words, let it echo below. Not as performance, not as obligation, but as an anchor. Because each time you name your truth, you create a bridge, not only for yourself, but for others who may be waiting for a sign. What you share becomes a mirror someone else has been longing to see. And in that sharing, healing expands beyond you. It becomes a field where others can also find home. This is the real secret of healing. It is not solitary. It begins in the privacy of your own nervous system, yes, but it extends outward, weaving threads of connection where isolation once lived. Every time you soften a defense, you open a space for love. Every time you choose honesty over silence, you invite intimacy. Every time you remember your own worth, you remind the world that wholeness is possible. Coming home to yourself is not selfish. It is the most generous act you could ever offer, because when you are whole, you cannot help but radiate that wholeness outward. So do not rush. Do not measure your pace by anyone else's. Your homecoming cannot be late because the door has always been waiting. The child you once were has been patient, watching, knowing that one day you would gather the courage to turn inward again. And now, here you are, listening, remembering, choosing presence over performance. This is not an ending, it is a return. Not into perfection but into truth, not into fixing but into finding, not into someone new but into who you've always been. And as we close, carry this with you. You were never broken. You were only hidden, and now you are being found. If these words found you, it was never by accident. Stay close, subscribe, so you don't miss the next step in this journey, because your inner child will keep speaking and together we will keep listening.